Why do you guys want to do this show?
I just want money and power.
Because you asked me.
Because politicians can be, what's the P word I'm looking for?
You like pettiness, right? There's
Yes,
a lot
I
of
do.
petty kind of shade.
I was thinking something else, but okay, let's roll with it.
Jeez, all right.
A podcast that talks about politics in a different way.
You want to talk about politics in a way that is real. Politics is funny.
It's petty
That's the kind of politics stuff I like to talk about.
politics with Keisha,
Hold on, now I gotta try to sound smart.
Sean Skipworth.
Campaign finance stuff, it's getting out of control.
Learn,
You're giving vast sums of money.
Because, it's a lot like town gossip.
laugh,
Here we go. How's this going to go?
oh, and subscribe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petty Politics. We are finally back with episode 2. I'm Keisha. I am also the host of the Libra Lounge with Keisha. And we also have are you my co-host or am I your co-host or are we co-hosts?
Today you tried to make me the host and you the co-host, but
And he
I
didn't
shut
want to
that
let it
down,
happen.
so no.
Yeah, okay. Well, we've got, let me see.
I'm guest co-host, I guess.
It's our show.
Oh, that's
We
right.
just
This is your show.
It's our show, but we still got some little things to kind of figure out, like,
I'm not Barbara Walters. You're Barbara. This is like the Saturday edition of 2020, and I'm that weird anchor that comes on the
Yeah,
weekend.
you do. Oh,
That he's
gotcha.
only on Saturdays.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I was nice enough to let this guy over here, what title? Professor, councilman, wizard, what other titles?
Wizard's good. Ninja.
Really? Ninja.
Sure, why not?
Sean Skipworth here. And before we get started, I know a lot of podcasts are still continuing the podcast blackout. So we hope that you will take our show as a little bit of a break from the protest, just a time to learn, be educated, and get some different perspectives about the things that are going on in the world right now. Then it kind of is cool that you got a black person and a white person talking about it. That way you get we got two white people because producer James will surely say something. You'll have some different perspectives. Sean is a politician, so
Man,
it's really good.
let's keep this friendly.
I know. Don't boo him don't boo him till after the show is done. So to hear where he's coming from, and then you have me, who sometimes I'm like a modern day Sojourner Truth.
Emphasis on the truth, right?
Right.
I'll tell you the truth.
Yes, loudly in front of people, behind your back, I will tell the truth. So Sean has actually picked out a pretty good topic for us to
Not that it was that
cover.
difficult.
Not right now, because all
yeah.
you have to do right now on Google search is type B, and it's like Black Lives this, Black Lives
Yeah.
that, Black people, light-skinned Black people. We're all caught
Yep.
up, as we should be, in the Black Lives Matter movement. So, what you got?
Well, so obviously the George Floyd, the death of George Floyd, the subsequent protests, like you said. So I had thought we'd maybe talk about that specific incident that led to his death, the arrest of him, and the kneeling and all of that. Because these things happen, so Black Lives Matter came about, I can't remember how many years ago, but, within the last, 5 years or so. And it was kind of in response to things like, Trayvon Martin, and then he had all the other problems in Ferguson with the police department and stuff out there. And so, occasionally we'll get these incidents, these publicized incidents about use of force, right? Police use of force. And so it's one thing to do is to kind of unpack the incident, right? Now this incident, I think, is a good example. It's just murder.
Right.
To me, it's straightforward. And other than like the police union in Minnesota and Minneapolis, you're not really seeing, even among law enforcement, people that are saying that, it's questionable or something. That, it was murder, period. So I think that's good only in the sense that we're not having that part of the conversation this time.
Right, yeah.
That we're kind of squarely focusing on it. But you have other incidents where it is a little more questionable sometimes, that it can look bad, but when you really unpack it and slow it down, it's more on the margin if force was justified or not.
Right.
But I mean, what was your reaction when you first saw this?
I'll be honest with you.
And how did you first see it? It's kind of one of these. Where were you when Kennedy died, or something? Where did you first see this?
I didn't want to watch it. I'm like, I'm not watching it because we were just on the tail end of the jogger's death.
Yes,
It was just like,
and that's contributed to this too, because I think this added to it as well.
Right. I didn't watch the video for like 2 weeks until I was on the phone with my best friend and another friend, and we were talking about some things, and then we start talking about that, which I'd been keeping up with the story, but I'm like, I don't want to watch this video.
Yeah.
She's like, you have to watch it. I'm like, no, I don't. And she's like, I'm sending it to you right now. You need to watch it. And to watch it in itself is horrible. But then to listen to the people, the bystanders who were trying to help makes it so much worse. And
you can imagine you're him, and then this is happening to you, and you know that you're literally dying, and there's even people that are yelling like, "Stop doing this!"
And this person,
and it's like you're like on another planet. I mean, it's like it doesn't even matter. I can't even.
I don't. James had asked me. And let me just say, you guys, if you don't know, and today you guys can't see us. I'm clearly black, and producer James, my husband.
Really? Are you clearly black?
And producer James, my husband, is skim milk white. So there's been I'm not sure what the correct word would be, how our household has been lately.
Probably something like white don't matter.
Yeah, pretty much. So he did ask me, he was like, so please don't get offended. And this is how he started off.
Those are always bad.
So I'm like, because I'm already got my defenses up.
Don't take offense. Better to sneak attack. Just go in blazing.
I think I had chewed his ass out so bad, like 2 days before. I understood where the fear was coming from. So it's like, go ahead, James. He's like, so is the George Floyd case is it worse than, I can never remember Ahmaud's last name.
Ahmaud Arbery.
Thank you. Was it worse than his case? And I said, no. I said they were both tragic, very, very wrong. I said, but here's the difference. I said, with Ahmaud, most people don't know what it feels like to get shot, okay? But everyone has had a stuffy nose. They've had to hold their breath. Everyone knows what it feels like to not be able to breathe. I said, so people were able to relate to it. I said, and then there was the video. You see what's being wrong, and you hear this man calling out for a grown man calling out for his mom, and then you hear these people. That one guy, he never gave up. He kept saying, dude, you're a bitch. Why are you still doing this? And I said, and we all watched a man die.
Yep.
I said it was the tip of the iceberg.
I think there was two main points that was really set it apart for me from the jogger to Floyd. The jogger was two private citizens who murdered him. This was police. This was the state. This was people who actual job is to protect and serve.
Yeah.
And we've all watched Cops, or we've all watched Live PD. We've seen people get arrested.
And we've laughed. It's been a source of entertainment.
We've laughed at people who've said, "Ow, ow, ow! You're hurting me,"
Yes.
and then you just saw them run, 100 yards and jump the fence. But there was something about this that it was immediately, even after watching all those kind of videos, this was different. The moment that you heard him asking for help,
when he had four guys sitting on him, I mean,
it was different.
I can't even imagine how it would feel for someone, a grown man's knee and all of his weight to be on my neck. I can't even imagine the fear of it. I'm like, that is just like, I don't know. And I know a lot of people right now are saying that, when people put Black Lives Matter, that we're saying that police lives don't matter. And that's not the truth. And I'll say this for me, there was 4 officers who were arrested. But there was 2 of them that were very new to the force, and one guy, I think it was his 4th day, and he was being trained. And if you listen to the video,
this is a training day, right?
Exactly. So I'm sure he's like, "What the fuck? Like, how can I get out of this situation? But you can also hear him saying, I think you guys need to roll him over. You know, and I can't even imagine the pressure that was on him. Like, what do I do? Because, you know, the police is known for it to be like the band of brothers. We don't go against each other. So I don't feel like charges should be pressed against him.
That saying that may get him a lighter sentence or something. Who knows? I could see that playing out that way. But echo James said too. Yeah, I think when you see that it's the police, I mean, they're trained in what to do and what to not do, and that you have some morons running around policing, air quotes, right, policing their neighborhood. That's bad, but it does seem like the police. You don't want to be seeing that happen.
It's a fearful thing because you are dealing with someone who is supposed to make things right. They're supposed to protect, but you're being attacked by them, and so you've got these bystanders that are like, "What do you do? Do we go and push the cop off? Because then, my life is going to be in danger."
And I can imagine you're a bystander here watching this, and that may have crossed your mind. But then again, if these guys are being so heavy-handed and doing this, my thinking is, they're going to shoot me or something if I do that. So, I mean...
It's...
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what I would do if I were there. Oh, God. Oh. Can you imagine me being right there witnessing it? It is just one. I mean, even there was the EMT who was like, I'm telling you, there's blood coming out of his nose.
I watched there's a Legal Eagle channel that I watch a lot on YouTube. It's a great channel. And he broke down some of the things that can happen if people do step in. And the problem is you can't be a good Samaritan against the police.
Right.
Because they are the good Samaritan by law, unfortunately. So, you can't knock a cop off. Then you're attacking a cop. Then it's just, there's no good way to resolve it.
So what do you do? It's kind of like you're fucked either way. You're fucked either I'm going to witness this person, and I'm sure at some point the bystanders didn't think that it was going to end with him dying. They think they were going to let
You're probably right.
Yeah.
I suspect you're right about that.
And then you're like, do I go in and help? And then you're like, then I'm not going to go home tonight. So the bravest thing to do was to stand there and talk.
And a key difference with this one as compared to some other incidents where there's been a lot of outcry about sort of racial disparity or use of force, is that this situation was moving very slowly. So I'll give you, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but there was a case a couple years ago where a black man, he was shot, I think 9 times by the police, and he reached into his shirt or coat or something to reach for a cell phone or something, and they killed him. Okay. And so a lot was made about the number of times they shot him. Over at the college, they have like a training simulator for like the police classes that they do. And so it's like a screen, and you're there with like a special kind of gun, and you shoot at it, and you can sort of interact with it a little bit. And so there's some cases where you may have to shoot or whatever. So if you're watching this thing, there was a case where a guy, the police gives him instructions, and he doesn't follow them, and he runs away. He chases him. Guy goes around a corner. The guy turns, reaches into his jacket, and pulls out a gun. And of course, the cadet, shoots him. Right. So they can go back and they show when you shot. Now, interestingly, when the shot went out, the hand was still in his jacket. He hadn't actually pulled it out yet. Now, you look at that. Did he make the right decision to shoot? The answer is yes, I think, but not for the reasons that it might appear. The answer isn't yes because he did actually have a gun. He had no way to know that. But if you're doing this and you're giving instructions not to do that, it doesn't matter what you're reaching for, a handkerchief or something. Right. That's the universal symbol for I'm whipping out a gun, so you're going to get shot. Yeah. And you watch something like that, and that happens very quickly. And even if the guy had pulled out a cell phone, you maybe say, well, what did it appear to be? I told you to freeze.
I told you to stop.
And so then a lot was made that these 2 officers shot this guy 9 times in 3 seconds. You can shoot a gun. 2 people? Oh, yeah. You can unload 9 rounds.
That's incredibly easy.
That's nothing.
That's almost reflex if you've trained any with firearms. That's just automatic.
And I'm not totally familiar with the incidents from all of that case to know if there was more going on, but I mean, you could take a situation like that. That's at least questionable, right? There's something to look at. It's maybe justified, maybe not. Right. But in this case, it doesn't have that. It was moving very slowly. There was no threat to those officers at all.
Yeah.
The guy was subdued. I mean, it had none of the check marks that you would have to say, maybe we should take a closer look at this. And usually whenever I read about or see about one of these incidents, I usually am always like, okay, I really want to look into this more closely and ask some people. This one, it was pretty obvious what's going on. But I think you take something like this on top of other incidents that are more questionable, and then you've got the Aubrey case recently and all of that, and everybody's out of work. Unemployment's very high.
Still have a pandemic going around.
And yeah, you put all that together, and
it's
here you go.
It's a recipe for disaster.
And so I think we kind of arrived where we are. So
right. It's been before the show we were kind of talking about social media, and it has been a platform for ignorance, even more so than usual. And I yesterday had to tell someone, for the love of God, stop with all of your posts that start off with, well, I asked my 1 or 2 black friends. Okay, you know what? Don't. You're not helping yourself at all. And I don't like, well, I'm not racist.
Yeah.
We're all assuming that you're not. But since you brought it up, now I'm going to have to question it a little bit, especially when after you say that, you say the most racist thing, and then you say it again, but I'm not racist. It's like, well, your words sure were, It's been a lot of...
They're like saying, I'm not fat, but give me that cake, right? I don't know.
It's like saying, I'm not fat, but I can't fit those pants over there. It's been, I will say for me, the last 2 weeks have been pretty bad. It's been a time of fear because, people look at me and they see that I'm married to someone white and they assume certain things. But I'm like, but I'm black, and my dad is black, my brothers are black, my cousins are black, and they're all men. So it hits home for me because the fear that people have with black men and the police, it didn't just start. It is a norm for people like my mom. She worries all the time, that the boys have been educated on things to do, to not do, but it is still that fear that they will run into that one cop. So this isn't anything new. It's just now the rest of the world is being displayed everywhere. And a lot of people are upset about the whole Black Lives Movement. But here's the thing to think about is that people all over the world have united for this cause. And in order for things to get better, it can't just be black people out there protesting. It's got to be black people, white people, trans people, Asian people. And that is what has happened. And I think that it's the acknowledgement by certain groups that something is wrong. I think that will be the change. And maybe we should have listened more to Colin Kaepernick a few year ago.
Well, the NFL came out and said that they were wrong about that. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah, so the NFL said that they backtracked on what they'd said several years ago, and that they didn't have an issue with the kneeling, and they understood why he did that, and so they kind of had their mea culpa moment on that. So good. They did. They went back. You mentioned Black Lives Matter. In the reaction that people have to it sometimes. Sometimes I've wondered if this is an issue of branding, right? And there's another example to bring up. So you have Black Lives Matter, and then recently you've had this call that they say, defund the police, right? Okay.
Right.
So I've often wondered, you tell me what you think here, or if this would kind of, you just tell me what you think.
Can you tell our audience what that means? Because I really want to defund the police.
Stick with me.
Okay.
We're going to get to that, I think. So the Black Lives Matter, okay. I've often thought when the movement came out, if it would have made a difference if they called it Black Lives Matter 2. What do you because I think the response you get is they'll say, well, all lives matter. Okay, yes. But the Black Lives Matter, I don't think they're saying, that's not the intent of it, is to say only Black Lives Matter.
No, that's not the intent.
It doesn't say that either. But then it didn't say Black Lives Matter 2. But part of me wonders if, from a marketing standpoint, right? Which is, let's be honest, when you have a slogan, a movement is marketing. I mean, that's what it is.
Okay. Yes, most definitely.
So these things matter, right? So I wonder, or do you think that would make it, I don't know, kind of, I can't think of the word, if it would make it like dismissive
Softer.
or soft, yeah, something like that.
I agree. It does make it softer, and I don't think it needs to be softer. I don't think it needs to be softer when we have all witnessed what the problem is, and it hasn't changed.
But do you think it cuts through some of this noise about all lives matter? Because you say Black Lives Matter too. I don't think you can really have that discussion where you say the response of all lives matter would seem kind of ridiculous.
Here's the thing: is that yes, all lives do matter. That should be a given every damn day of the week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, all lives do matter. But we're not having a problem with all lives. We're having a problem with black men being unjustly targeted by the police. That is the problem. And I think people, I mean, I've been pissed off a lot this week, okay? Because people have said some really just stupid things, and it's like a lot of people have focused so much on the rioting and the looting and all of this. And yeah, I don't condone that for not 1 minute at all. But you know, and someone goes, well, what if your business gets torn up?
Well, that would be bad.
I would be, I'm like, I would be fucking pissed off. But I would be very upset. I would be sad. It's my baby. It's our money. But at the same time, we can rebuild. Just like if a hurricane came through here and the building was destroyed, everything was wiped away. We can rebuild, but you cannot replace a life. And that's a building should not be more important than a person's life. And people have truly shown their true colors, that they are more focused on a building, material things, and that's sad.
Well, if you truly, if rioting is truly something that you feel super strongly about, then I wouldn't pay it that much attention, because then what's happening is you're letting the rioters win, right? As opposed to the protesters, right?
Thank you.
If we want to make a differentiation, so don't do that. It's not. I've heard it say, well, they ruined their opportunity. Well, who's they? Isn't that this nice crowd of people had a peaceful protest, and then after dark they're like, all right, and they put their ski masks down. They're like, time to go looting. I would imagine in most cases this is two disparate
groups of people.
You're not talking. There might be some that are the same, but I think generally it's not.
No.
It was like in the civil rights movement after dark. Martin Luther King wasn't like, all right, y'all, get your ski masks on. Let's go burn down some crap.
Well, for one thing, you're tired from being protesting all day.
Like
you don't have, I'm done. We're about to go home, eat, take a bath, and watch TV.
Y'all need to do this in November. We need
Exactly.
we need cooler weather.
It's too damn hot. These are two different groups of people. Trust and believe me. I am 100% for the people that are protesting. However, I understand the frustration of the rioters. The looters,
I sort of even consider those almost the same. If you're rioting and you're looting, that.
Well, I thought they were the same until a few days ago. They're like, oh, no.
So you say we should have protesters, rioters, and looters. So there's three categories.
It's like, oh, really? I'm just like, come on.
One of the things I saw that kind of helped clear it up a little bit was just the fact that there's been black folks that are in the community that call out the rioters and looters who are destroying resources that are in the exact community that they're trying to stand up for. And I think the tribal nature of humans is still really strong. So to your question about the branding, I think as soon as you identify anything based on immutable characteristics no one has any control over, the tribal nature of humans takes over immediately. If you say black, fat, short, thin, anything that you're born with immediately creates a tribe, period. And that's just our nature.
And I guess that's sort of what I'm getting at, is that if you add that word, if you say two, if you're in some way trying to address that, because you're saying, hey, we acknowledge everybody's lives are important.
I think right now may not be the time to add that too.
No, it's too late anyway. That's something that would have to happen originally.
Right.
But it's interesting to me that for some people, when they say Black Lives Matter, they hear only Black Lives Matter, I think.
Exactly.
But they're also not saying that either. Okay, so so a branding issue there, right? Maybe not. Maybe it is how it has to be. But then it makes me think of this defund the police thing. So you were asking, what does that mean, right? So it's another case where I think the branding is terrible, right? Because it isn't an untrue statement. That is what they're saying. But what's the first thing you think when you hear that?
Take away the money from police.
Well, that I even I thought that it would like abolish it, even though that's not what they're saying. But many people have taken that to mean knee jerk, like, oh, well, what are we going to do without police?
Right.
Well, and the problem is that there are some even Congress people who are standing it kind of in the way that says defund, and also it must be completely redone. It's trash. So they're having a hard time making it like.
I wouldn't choose
to your point,
that slogan, and I don't. Well, let me explain what it is, and then maybe I'll get what I think about it anyway, and then what everybody thinks. But so what they're saying basically is to take money from the police, not all of the money, not abolish it, but take funding from the police and use it to fund like other programs that have been shown to have an impact on like crime or things like community programs, things like that.
No.
So it wouldn't be getting rid of all of it, but some of it. And then some go further, and there is a little truth to this. They talk about the militarization of the police force. And this is when you get some conservatives and liberals agree on this sometimes, like especially the libertarians, that, there's a history of like the military selling surplus equipment to police forces and things like that. So the police have like war equipment, right? When their job, they're not in downtown, Kabul, Afghanistan, or Baghdad or something, right? But they have this kind of equipment, and they roll this out. You're like, well, you don't give a kid a toy without batteries, do you? I mean, you don't buy this thing never to use it. That's the fear, right?
Right.
And so some have said, said that the two are the same, and that hey, we need to maybe spend less money on that and others on community programs.
Right.
Take Minneapolis. So that's been a big call. You had a bunch of city councilmen there said, I want to, disband our police force. That is what they're voting to do, but that isn't what it means. What I had read is it meant that like the county would, basically the county would have jurisdiction over it. And there are some towns that do that. Usually if you're very small.
Right.
So if you're a really small town, you don't need a police force. So the county, the sheriffs will do it. And my understanding was they were advocating for something on those lines to basically abolish the department, saying that they feel that the culture or whatever in it is broken. If that's the case, I don't think the specifics of that are so important, whether you should do that or not. But at this point, but I think that's what they're advocating for. You go back to like the label, right? I think saying defund the police is problematic because it's easily going to get conflated with getting rid of the police, which isn't what you're advocating.
Right.
It also, and I am going to criticize that position, I guess. We actually got an email. I'm on city council.
You are?
Yes, if you didn't know.
You know that? No.
People don't listen. That's what I've learned. So it's good to repeat things a lot.
Yeah, you do.
He's a college student out of state, but he lives in Dickinson, and he sent an email to all of us on city council, to some people in, like the Houston mayor, League City mayor, saying that, to cut money to the police department, and then use the money to fund other things. I think that can present like a false choice, right? And also simplistic. You can not reduce funding to the police department and give money to those programs from other sources. You could even increase money to the police department. It also depends, what is your police department's budget, what's it spent on.
Right.
Like here in town, the police specifically, but no employees. I mean, if they get dependent health insurance, it's like $2,000 a month out of pocket.
Oh, God.
Okay, so in our case, I'm more thinking like, how do we increase the budget to deal with that?
Right.
It's not how do we increase the budget to buy a tank for the police or something.
We need a tank here in Dickinson,
but also, I know it made me feel.
It's what the town is
we'll
missing.
put a big gator on it. We'll have it at the football games to intimidate the other team. We have a tank,
Use it as a photo op as well.
Yeah, but I mean, but even when you say that. You ever heard like you get what you pay for, right? Sometimes. Yeah. And being a police officer, man, that is a hard job.
It is.
You got, okay, we focus on these dirty cops or whatever these people, but there's plenty of many of us have had good interactions with the police.
The majority of the time it is a neutral. Look, you got a ticket or a warning and go on your way.
You're never going to be happy with the people that are making you pay money or take you to jail or something.
Well, yeah.
Nobody that gets convicted says, well, I like prosecutors. They're really great people. I mean, so we tend to, let's not be simplistic about it, but we don't pay them particularly well given the danger of their job. And isn't there actually a school of thought that said if you want to weed people like this out and have it be more selective, then if you paid more Would this not maybe become a more competitive job that would get
Right.
higher quality people?
Yeah,
'Cause
that's a good point.
You could have lots of departments have shortages, right? And if you, no matter what kind of job you're doing, if it's police or running a restaurant, a fast food place,
Right.
you have some morons that are going to work for you sometimes. But one of the reasons, if you're a manager, you don't fire those people is you go, but they're the best I got, and I can't
Right.
get anybody else. And when the pool is really low, you're making it more difficult for them to make that decision. But
Right.
same thing with education too. We talk about that
Yeah.
teachers aren't well paid, considering the level of education and
what they have to deal with on a daily basis.
so I don't know. In some ways, I think it depends how the money is spent. But I
Right.
don't just to say, oh, we should defund the police. The other parts I'm with you.
Right.
There's other things we can be focusing resources on
Right.
to reduce crime. But
Well, you just said something. You said that. Do we need to cut? So, Sean, you just said something. You said that, part of being a manager is, you've got some morons, but you're like, that's the best that I've got.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I don't want to have surgery from a doctor
right,
who's
exactly.
just the best that the hospital's got.
well, and we pay doctors a lot more, so they're more selective.
Yeah, so I'm like, no, I think I want the best. I want the one with the most education, the more practice.
What's that commercial they have now where remember the doctor walks in, he goes, all right. You're gonna be good." He
Yes,
goes,
I know
well,
exactly
I got
what you're talking about.
reinstated.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want that
It'll be fine.
person. So my thing is that, when you have a police officer who has been cited for
Yeah.
abuse, languish, sleeping on the job or whatever, at what point do you say, you know what, we're going to have to part ways?
Yeah,
Then,
there's a lot of people that are talking about the problems, the inherent problems with police unions, with police brotherhoods, with
Right.
with the whole idea of internal affairs. We'll take care of this internally,
Right.
and multiple citations, things like that aren't public. People
Right.
don't know that cops can
Yeah.
be bad.
Right.
They protect themselves,
Right.
even though they're public servants. Having a union that puts the protection of the people above the people that they serve, a lot of people have an issue with that now.
Yeah, even
Yeah.
in kind of the union community, I mean, police unions are part of that, but other unions do look at them kind of differently. They are just I think they tend to take positions that are more conservative than unions take generally. But there's other reasons too. I think maybe some of what James was talking about. Other unions, even public sector unions, do tend to look at them a little differently, and they're also kind of jealous sometimes because, like a state like Texas is pretty anti-union, but carved out. Police and fire unions are carved out. They can still exist in Texas, but like teachers, we can't unionize.
Right.
We can't strike.
Right.
But police and fire are allowed to do that.
Right.
So yeah, they're looked at a little bit differently, even among unions.
So I know you wanted to talk about black men and where they kind of stand when they become adults. I know I'm saying it totally wrong. I
Yeah.
swear I read what you sent me. I did read it.
I believe you.
Well, here, I will be honest with you. When I first said I'm like, he's got to be out of his goddamn mind if he thinks I'm about to read all this. And I said, James, if
Just
the
look
point,
at the pretty pictures.
I said, James, if the point is not conveyed within the first two paragraphs, I'm done reading it. But
You're like
once I read it,
some
I'm
of my
like,
students. Yeah.
well, I was like, once I read it, I was like, oh, okay. So I kept reading, and it's something that I feel needs to be discussed as well, because it contributes to a lot of the things that we're dealing with right now.
Yes.
So I'll let you take over.
Okay. I didn't know if we were going to take a break or not. We're just going to
go
power
through.
through.
Yeah.
Okay. So so this was a study. It was done back in 2018, where it came out in 2018. So what the researchers did is this is my data nerd part of me. Like, oh, they got such good
You
information.
have a nerd part of you?
They followed the no, not at all. They use the census data to look at income levels and all of this, and so it's a really good source of data. So what I'm trying to say is this isn't some like cherry picked study where they made stuff look this way. There's a lot of reason to say this was really well done. Harvard did it. If that gives you any it makes you care
I don't
at
know
all.
who that was.
Harvard.
Oh,
College?
Harvard. Oh,
Harvard.
you said it with the accent, and I didn't get. I was like, Hova?
Yeah.
Like Hova, like Jay-Z Hova?
No,
I was like,
no, Harvard. Yeah,
Harvard. Okay,
Harvard.
the elite of the
Yeah.
elite.
So, and basically what they show is that when you look at, you can look at at race and other factors like age, gender, economic background to say, like, how successful will you be?
Right.
Like, so you could take a lot of measures, like what is the likelihood you'll end up in prison or to make a lot of money. So one of the things they look at here is they track by income. And one of the things we know, a truth in America is win the sperm race, right? That's my best advice. I tell my students sometimes, my best advice to you is to be rich. That's what I do. Because what we find is that if you are born wealthy, the odds of you dying wealthy are pretty good.
Right.
You are more likely than not, in some cases much more likely than not, going to die wealthy as well.
Right.
And and that might be even despite yourself being a total idiot. I mean, it's they say better to be lucky than good. Yeah, it is better to be lucky than good. Right?
Yeah.
If I'm born a gazillionaire, right, from the age of 2,
right.
even if I'm a complete idiot with business and make dumb decisions, man, I may end up rich despite myself, right?
We know some people like that.
there are some people like that, sure.
Yeah.
And then there might be people that are born rich and then they work hard and they make something of it too. That's also true.
Right.
And sometimes people are not born wealthy and they do become rich, but we don't often hear about that. We don't hear about the cases where it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah.
We make movies out of like Pursuit of Happiness, right? With Will Smith and all that.
Yep.
But we don't do the movies where someone's like, I really want to be rich, and then their life goes by and they're like, and I wasn't.
Yeah, and there's a lot. That's more
the
the
end and I
reality.
Sure, the
by
odds,
far.
and that's what the numbers tell you too. So that's true by income. If you look at race, what you tend to find is if you're born white, leaving other factors out, you're more likely to die, rich than not, right? Than any other race, right?
Right.
But wealth tends to be the most predictive factor, regardless of race. That's what people thought. But what they did is they broke it down by economic background. So how rich were you, at birth or for most of your life? Gender and race, right? So they found that for every combination except one, it was true that if you were born wealthy, you were more likely to end up wealthy, except for black males. And this gets to be a very interesting conversation. Not black women. They still are more likely to die rich than a poor black female. But black males are not. And that it's very interesting for a lot of reasons. What's your initial take to that? So you read that, and I'm laying it out here. What are your thoughts about that?
So when we were reading it, I'm like, you know what? That sounds about right. And so then we started asking each other, and we as a producer, James and I let him live with me sometimes.
That's good. You're so
that was really
generous.
nice. I know, really, I know.
You're rich in gifts.
They should name a city after me.
Well, if I win that election,
We'll talk.
We'll name this little street down here.
Yes, Holman Street. I was like, that has a lot to do with I think the crime rate with black men as well. And I'm going to see it, I saw it from a different perspective than James, because I said black men are targeted. When you see a black man, people think certain things. Well, I don't want to hire him. You know what I mean? If he comes in, he's got dreads. Oh, no, he's a thug. I don't want to hire him.
They talk a little bit about this in the paper, that they start asking, like, the analysis, what do we think's going on when they speculate on the results.
It's
and they talk about, you walk in to get a job somewhere. And
right. And then, once upon a time, we had affirmative action that was supposed to protect people of color, and we don't have that anymore.
It's complicated. It still does exist.
It does?
It's complicated.
It's stronger in some areas than it used to be, and weaker in others.
So, and with that, I'm like, and it's so hard to say black men walk around with a target on their front, their back, and their sides to someone who's like my husband, who grew up white and privileged. He does not. You were.
So, yeah.
You don't know what it's like to be poor. You didn't grow up in anything near urban. You didn't have black friends. You didn't
I totally agree.
You were like sheltered suburban.
You were very sheltered. Yeah.
Absolutely right. Yeah. It's and
so
I've
when
got a
I
different
say
perspective of
things like
than I
black
used to.
men are targeted, he doesn't get that. He doesn't believe that.
No, I believe it, and I understand it. A lot better. But the part to your question a bit is, if you start wealthy, as far as I know, there's nobody trying to go and steal your money, like more so than.
Well, I was going to say that's the rat
else,
race of capitalism in America. Yeah,
well, it is, but it's interesting because we watched that show. It was a 30 for 30 on ESPN. It was called Broke.
Was it Vince Young?
He's
like the poster child for.
Well, he was one of them. Mike Schmidt.
Mike Vick
was another
too.
one.
Was another
So
one.
it was a story about athletes that come into a lot of money, and then all the
They don't know what
terrible
to do
choices
with
they're making.
it.
So, so what's interesting about that, and I think it fits
There's
into
a
some
term
of that.
there's a term that is used for that, and it's
Well, there's
quote me,
also
it's nigger rich.
Yeah.
You
Well,
get
but-
all of this
but see-
money and
but-
don't know what to do with
But
it.
see, that's what this study is not examining. They're not examining
It's choices.
What they're
Right.
well, no. That's not what I mean. What you're talking about is this phenomenon. The NFL has seminars about it.
Right.
Where rookie comes in and they give you like $80 million.
You don't know what to do with
but
that.
See, but the difference in the study is that's not what they're looking at.
Right. You're
They're
saying your family was wealthy.
These were wealthy African Americans.
Right.
So you grew up
wealthy.
affluent, right? And you don't end up. So they're not. So the excuse I think of, well, they don't have. They just were given $50 million and they grew up, poor and urban and ignorant. That isn't.
Right.
There's a lot of reason to say this is not what they're examining here.
Right. And I
Well,
think
so
that
for me, it sounds like what you're saying is that you have a black family. You've got the mom and dad who were successful at whatever.
You're the Cosbys, right? So that's
exactly.
You're the
You're the Huxtables.
It's the
You're
Huxtables
Theo.
have money,
So
but
Theo grows up.
So Theo grows up and has to go get a job on his own.
And they're saying Theo is still more likely to turn out poor.
Yes, that's the perfect way to put it.
But not his sister.
Not his sister. Yeah,
Denise
yes.
will somehow make it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where you have to get into wondering if there's a culture of choice that's different for Theo than his sister. Is there something innate to how
Let's
they
say
approach
that it's
life
not. Let's say
differently,
that
or-
Theo and Denise both are fully college educated.
Yep.
They both are pursuing the same kind of career.
Yep.
But when Denise walks into an office,
Which Denise was a screw up. Who's the sister that was more with it? I can't remember all of a sudden.
Raven?
No,
Boy, that was the little girl.
No, there was
Sorry.
because
We
Denise was
had-
the oldest,
Oh,
and then
Denise
he had
was the
his
oldest.
sister-
That was Lisa Bonet. You had.
And then Theo was next. Oldest,
Then you had the older sister that was on there
Oh,
sometimes.
But then he had a sister younger than Theo.
Then you had
right?
Vanessa, and then you had Ruby.
Oh, Vanessa. So
Vanessa.
So take Vanessa and Theo,
yes.
right? That's the.
So when Vanessa walks into a place to become, let's just say, a freaking teacher,
Yeah.
she is more likely to get that job than
Yes.
a black man.
They're
But-
saying
and-
if Vanessa and Theo walked in,
yes.
they'd be more likely to hire
And here's
Vanessa
why,
than
and
Theo.
this is from working in school districts myself, is that for one thing, and I know this and I've heard it firsthand, that principal is going to be concerned about what her parents are going to say about having a black male as a teacher. As a coach, it's completely different. So it is that walking around with that stereotype. It is more acceptable for a black woman to be in charge of a classroom. There is still something seen as barbaric, thuggish about a black man.
So I think, okay, so what this turns to, I think, is you start to get an interesting question about when we say racism, what does that word actually mean today versus in the past?
I don't even think people
let me,
know.
And let me give you kind of my theory about some of this. So I sometimes advocate talking about racism versus prejudice, or racism versus prejudice. So when we talk about racism, right, the first word that pops into my head is like the Klan. Like racism, like I hate black people. I will say, they say that out loud. It's just an overt statement.
Right.
Yeah.
We talked about this.
This is exactly what I said. A big problem is a lot of white people think racist means Nazi.
KKK
That's what a
or
lot
the
of people say.
neo-Nazi.
I can't be racist.
So-
I'm not a skinhead Nazi.
And it's
right?
true. I think the overwhelming majority of people do not think, black people should be slaves. We should have segregation.
But
I think most
I
people
don't
don't
want
think
my
it.
kid to marry one either.
Yeah. So I think in some ways we've come a long way in that with some exceptions, let me just throw that out there,
Yes,
it is
there are
generally
the
not
exceptions.
acceptable to just be an overt racist in polite
Right.
society. If you just run around and say, I'm in the KKK, I'm in the, that is not something that is okay. So we have done a good job of people saying, okay, you can't. That's
No
not
one wants to
okay.
be associated with
Can't be
someone who's
associated.
known
You can't be
racist.
that way.
Yeah.
And I do think that truly people they don't really accept those organizations. Those organizations are like shells of what they used to be. They still
Yes.
exist, but it is not like, you know, that,
It's
I mean, it's almost
nothing like it
comical.
used to be.
They have like tiki torches, right?
Right.
I mean, this is like a joke, right? It used to not be that way. They
Right.
had like real authority.
Yeah, they did.
Well, they had Jim Crow laws. They
Yeah.
were part of policy.
The
Now
KKK
they're
was
so
truly
far from that.
feared,
Yes,
Yeah,
but
and not so much now.
As the civil rights movement went against them, there were also like the Southern Poverty Law Center was able to come at them financially and make it to where basically they can't be a single group anymore because of liability. So now they're really fractured, and there's these
Right.
tiny little backwoods splitter groups everywhere and all this. Okay, so when we talk about like racism in that sense, no, that is largely kind of banished to the fringes of American
Right.
society, right? Now, but then this gets to the question of, so what is, when people say racism today, what does that actually mean? And so I think to what you were saying, it's the whole, you're going to have a job working at, you know, T-Mobile or something. Black, you know, guy walks in 1920, wants a job. I think what they're maybe saying in this paper is that there's a dynamic going on where the hiring manager may have no issue with black people whatsoever. You could be married to a black person. You could have, you know, black friends, all this stuff. But something internally, societally,
It's
grown up,
yeah.
movies, whatever, there's just something that they don't maybe even perceive that they like, nah, I'm going to pick this other person.
It's a level of uncomfortableness, and it's a level of, oh God, am I going to catch backlash for hiring this person? Am I going to lose customers because I've got this black man that's got dreadlocks?
But see, I
It's
think
a-
for many people, they're not having that conversation in their head. They're not actually sitting there overtly saying, God, can I have a black kid up here at the desk? But nonetheless, maybe what you're talking about, the fear of that is present on some level.
Right.
So literally prejudice, right?
Yeah.
I think we've got to a point, and I think you're exactly right. I think it's not overt racism. It's racially kind of influenced culturism, you know, elitism a bit. So if you look at a black guy with, you know, dressed like he's hitting the streets, sagging pants, if he's got a look, that carries
Right.
a prejudice with it. That's
But
not
he's
based
got his
on
Harvard
color.
T-shirt underneath the deal, and he's
Yeah.
walking.
And that's the thing. So it's
Yeah.
I think we're at a point where we've done away with the, you know, the colored water section.
Yeah.
But we've got to now. It's more nuanced.
It's almost harder because it was easy to see it back then. You would
Oh,
just
so
look
easy,
around.
yeah.
You're like, my
was
God, there's
there.
these things.
Yeah.
And today it's more.
It's undercover.
It's under.
Yeah.
And I think the thing. Let's circle back to these police incidents. So you know the kind of the classic archetype of the incident is black suspect, police use force, shoot him, shouldn't have done it, it was racially motivated. Okay, so again, we go back to my initial premise here. Did the police officer say, oh, I hate black people, bam, and he shot this guy?
right.
No, I don't think that's what's being said. I think the implication is there's something maybe imperceptible even that affected your judgment, that in an identical situation, in some cases, with like a white suspect, maybe they don't shoot. And that's kind of what this study's trying to tell you, is they're saying we're not, because this is just us like BS in here a little bit, right? But what they're trying to say is, no, there's something quantitative to this, right? Because those results, if you say it's race, they're saying, number one, it's not quite that, it's more subtle than that.
Right.
It isn't just race. They talk about, well, let's add race and gender together, and in this instance, at least we see some differences there.
Right.
And then I think that's where you really have to look at what the precise nature is. So I don't think it's that, you know, there's just cops or anybody's running around, hiring managers saying, oh, I hate black people, can't wait to stick it to these guys.
No, you're right.
But there's something going on, and for some people, it doesn't make you a horrible person. You don't even have to be white to do this. I feel like
you're
maybe,
right.
I feel like maybe I told this story on here before, but I'll repeat it again if so. I say it in class a lot too. So this came out during the Trayvon Martin, the trial of Zimmerman and all that with Trayvon Martin, right? So it was written by a guy who writes for the Associated Press. He's like he does like their African American columns that they have like pieces on that. So we talked about, so he's a successful reporter, and they live in a nice neighborhood, right? And so one day he was driving home in his neighborhood, and it was raining a little bit, like drizzle, and so he had a flat tire. So he pulled the car over. You know, it's drizzling, so he looked in his back of his car. It's a mess like everybody's, and he has the dreaded hoodie back there, right? And so the journalist is black, so he puts on his his hoodie, and he's got his head down and got the hood on. He's walking around. So here's a car behind him. Somebody's following him. You're over shaking your head, but wait, it's gold, right?
Okay.
So car's following him. Car stops. somebody gets out. It's his wife.
Oh,
She gets out and she says, "Oh my gosh, I didn't recognize you. Here, get in." He goes, "Yeah, car broke down, the tire, whatever." So driving to his house, and she said, "I didn't recognize you first because of the hood. And I'll be honest, when I first saw you, I thought, what is that guy doing in our neighborhood, right?" Yeah. And they're both black. And he goes on to make the point in there. He says, it isn't even when we say racism. It's this whole like white people hate black people, like the Klan. No, he was making this argument that when you see like the hoodie, right? That hasn't been a discussion with this, but that's often one. What's the black men in the hoodie, right? Yeah. So her deal is no, she's black, and she thought, this is a thug in the neighborhood. What is this guy doing? What is he doing in this neighborhood, right? Yeah. And it's not even that. It's just something.
We've been programmed. It's what we see, it's what we hear, and we absorb it without even knowing it.
Yeah. And is his wife a racist? I wouldn't say that.
No, I
don't think that at all.
Because I would have probably thought the same thing.
Right. If again, prejudice doesn't mean you're a racist. We have all had our moments where we have. You're at a convenience store at 9, a black guy walks in, and you kind of tense up. And maybe later you think about
any guy looking sketchy to go. I take that back. I'm not going in a convenience store at night.
Like 1 a.m.
That is something. No, I'm like, James, I'm going to need you to go get this because I don't want to be out. There's a fear. There's a guy who came in here into the boutique Saturday, and I was here by myself. No one else was open that day. And he was a sketchy looking guy. Okay? He wasn't even black. I don't know, like thinking, what the fuck are you doing in here? Like, what are you doing? And he was like, can you call me a taxi? And I'm like, oh my God. Like, are you kidding me? But he was, it's a fear. We all have a fear. And I think we have been programmed to fear black men. I think we've been programmed to fear types of black men. And I think that most of us, and I think a lot of people.
Now, when you say programs, I want to ask this.
Because of what we watch. When we watch, No,
I got you.
So let me give you an example, and it came from Jackson, okay? So James's son is high-functioning autistic, and he plays the video games, and one day, me and my mom heard him. He had gone and gotten a bandana, because black women, we all have bandanas because we wrap our hair up with it. He went and put it on. He's like, I'm going to be a gangster. So we watch things that tell us this is what a gangster looks like. This is what a bad person looks like. This is what a thief looks like. We're programmed without even realizing that we're being programmed.
Well, it's a biological fact that we've evolved with pattern recognition.
Yes.
Because it helped us survive when we're still on the plains and in the forest. This thing over there looks like it might be dangerous, so we'll run.
Right. That's a tiger. They tend to eat people.
Yes, exactly.
We're so ingrained with pattern recognition, and psychologists prove this all the time. You're exactly right. We don't know that we program ourselves.
Yeah, we do.
Biologically, the way that we've evolved is to
you do this to survive.
Patterns.
You have to do this to survive.
Yeah.
So,
but now it's way more.
And that's what I was going to ask. When you say programmed, I think getting back to a labeling thing a little bit. I don't think this is your intent, but some people are going to think when you say programmed that someone is doing the programming, like an evil genius overtly.
Yes.
That the grand dragon of the whatever is like. All right, media, let's let's get in here and portray them as thugs.
That all of this is because of the media. I'm like, no. It's all of this is because, for one thing, it's going on, and cell phones are capturing it so the world can see.
Well, right, and I think that sort of the depiction of, or whatever it is that is leading to this, because I don't want to just say it's the media, right? But whatever that sort of leads to this programming or this kind of this prejudice or whatever, the way we view these things, I don't think it's dictated by some evil genius, right? So, and some, I think, then you get into, they'll say they or want you to think of them like that. Come on. I think
that's a whole other show.
But nonetheless, there's a certain presentation of things, and people take that a certain way.
I mean, people see me and think loud. Which I am loud. I don't think I'm loud because I'm black. My mom's loud. My aunts are loud. We're loud. So, but here's the difference. So a woman can say, I'm loud because I'm Italian. That's what we do. And everyone goes, oh, ha, ha, ha. That's so funny. But with me, it's looked at as aggressive, rude.
And there used to be a time where Italians didn't think of it that way. right?
Yeah, but now it's celebrated.
That is how they were treated badly. Irish too, and that's,
but not now. It's like, oh, Teresa Judice. Oh, she flipped over the table because she's a hot Italian. She's got a temper. I flip over a table in a restaurant. There's a chance that someone's going to pull out a gun or say, bitch, you got to leave.
You need to watch The Sopranos. They have a lot of parts.
I did. I love The Sopranos.
Remember on there where they talk about like the Italian racism?
Yeah,
remember her ex-husband, the psychiatrist, he's like in the Italian-American lobby or whatever, like interest group.
Of course,
he's some basically it's like the NAACP for Italians. And so he's like, the depiction of Italians, it's often The Godfather, John Gotti.
Yes.
And he says all of this, and they get really upset about it.
It's the same thing, but this is one thing that I will say that I noticed this week is that some people are admitting it openly. Oh my God, I do that.
Yeah,
I didn't even think I did do that, and it's wrong. So to me, that is something that we all should be doing.
Well, and I think yes, because what happens a lot of times is you have. Let me apologize on behalf of white people for a minute. I guess at least some white people is that I'm not one of these. I apologize for slavery. I apologize for slavery on behalf of all white people.
Did you bring me a gift?
40 acres and a mule. I have for you. No, I mean those are kind of these trite. We apologize for slavery 200 years later.
Yeah.
But I mean. It's that I think you take some white people, the vast majority, who I don't think are racist in the sense like in our discussion, right? And so then someone says, well, that's racism, and you're speaking another language. You're talking about prejudice, what we define as prejudice.
And people
but when you say racism,
that's
they're
totally
like
different.
They're like, I do not hate black people.
Exactly.
And so they're like, I am not a racist. And so we end up, and it's sad in that sense because I think we're just using terms that have different meanings for different people. And that can be that when you talk about the Kaepernick and the kneeling thing, what was that about? It was about what is the purpose of the national anthem? So some people say the purpose of it is to honor the military and soldiers that went before you. Others say, no, it's about like this country and the principles it's founded on. And the fact of the matter is there's no law, or even if there was, it wouldn't matter. That says the national anthem is about X. And so if you don't stand for it, then you're against that. It doesn't mean it. So anytime you have these fluid meanings for something, symbolism, and so with racism, that word, it has different meanings to different people. Yeah. And depending on what time in the history of the world you said that word, if you said racist in the 1860s, meant you were, shooting at you lived south of the Mason-Dixon or whatever. Yeah. But even in the north, because in the north you had people, you seen Lincoln?
No.
So they talk. It's about the adoption of the 13th Amendment that ended slavery in the Senate. And you have some people that are like, we're going to free the blacks. Slavery should end. But I mean, what? Voting or interracial marriage?
Don't need to do that.
But see, those people weren't racists back then by those standards, right? So it depends on what the context of the time is. And you look at today, I think racism it's not that it's a bad word to use, it's just unclear as to what it means. So again, a lot of this goes back to the labeling. Yeah. We're arguing about what the labels mean or definitions of words mean. We're not even arguing about, because I have seen very few people say, yeah, they needed to put that knee on his neck. It was totally okay. Yeah. But you're not. You're seeing people that don't like that. But then when the discussion is turned to more of a discussion of like, even outside the police, of systemic race, issues, and I'm about to say it too, racism, but of the treatment of minorities, right? Yeah. Of just what we see of inequality, however you want to put it. That
you get to a point where I think you've got to a point now where the label has gotten so, like you said, unclear that it's almost impossible to say something is systemically racist. Okay, which policy, which person? Because everybody wants to fight whatever it is. It's just gotten so hard to say this is the policy that's doing it. This is the law. This is
because there is no law or policy or anything doing this.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard to fight when the label is so broad.
We're having different discussions, basically.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
We're not even discussing. They're like, why do you keep bringing this up? The Klan, we don't approve of those people. That's over. Right. And you're like, well, we're not. I'm not talking about that. But that's the assumption is that if you look at the black community speaking up, I think for many that they assume everybody, this is what we're talking about too, right?
Yeah.
And it's an unintentional failure to communicate, I think, if I want to be general.
Yeah.
That I don't think anybody, it's not overt, but it just kind of is what it is.
And, and I think communication, education are key right now. But to wrap things up, you did ask me if I'd watched the movie Lincoln, and I have not. But I did watch Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. And I'm going to end with a message from that film. Abe Lincoln, the president of our country, and his black friend whose mother was a slave, worked together, and you know what they were able to do?
Destroy the
defeat
vampires.
They were able to work together and defeat vampires. We want to thank you guys for tuning into the show. Once we get all this coronavirus stuff figured out, maybe we can start having more shows, video shows, and all of that.
There's an election going on.
Yeah,
I think the presidency's up for. I think somebody's running for that.
Yes.
Running for that.
Make sure you are following Sean on Facebook at what?
Sean SEAN #4 Dickinson DICKINSON.
And you guys can follow me on Facebook, Instagram. Yes, under the Libra Lounge with Keisha. Peace, love, and unity. That's all we can say. Just get together and make more mixed race kids. I don't know. Just what the world needs now is love, sweet love, and some sage.
I was saying that in my head, the lyrics when you picked it up.
So thank you guys, and we will see you next time.
Subscribe to the show so you never miss out. Plus, it will make us feel really good about ourselves.
I did it!
And for more laughs, don't forget to check out Keisha and the Libra Lounge. All right, we gotta go potty, so bye.